In this video, I'm going to be replacing the alternator in this 2003 Chevrolet Trailblazer Extended with an inline 6-cylinder engine. Alright, last night on my way home from work, I get a call from my wife. She is stranded up at the school. She was picking up the children from basketball practice and she couldn't get the car to start. She said that the headlights had stopped working and the dash panel lights had gone out, and well, it just shortly thereafter just died after she had got it parked at the school. Tried to crank it and there'd be no cranking power whatsoever. The negative battery terminal on this thing doesn't get a really good connection on the battery, so sometimes you just have to kind of wiggle that and it'll come back to life. Well, I tried that and it wasn't working. Got a brand new battery in this thing. This battery came out of my father-in-law's Trailblazer and it seems to be working just fine. However, as you just saw, the battery light came on. We jump started this car and started up just fine. Ran for about a minute and then just died again. And the reason why the Trailblazer died was because the battery died. When the alternator is not producing electricity, the vehicle is running solely on the battery power, which drains awfully quick. So what I'm going to do is pull the alternator out of the parts Trailblazer. It's an 04, same 6-cylinder engine. So that's where we're at with this vehicle. As much as I dislike this thing sometimes, I guess you can say this car actually is not revolting. Alright, I got the alternator out of the parts Trailblazer, easy peasy, because there's really nothing in the way. So what I'm going to do is remove this 10mm bolt, and then there are 3 of these, I believe they're 15mm bolts. I'm going to pop this wiring harness off of this. I'm going to take this bracket off, take the serpentine pulley belt off, of course, and go after the bolts for this thing. This air conditioner line runs right in front of the lower bolt. So you have to use like a box end wrench, 15mm, to get that lower bolt out. And then you can just use a socket with an extension and get these 2 bolts out. It's a little time consuming, but it's not hard. Alright, first thing I'm going to do before I touch anything is remove the negative battery cable. Alright, first things first, I need to get my wrench or a breaker bar or something into the tensioner pulley. Just put it in there, push down, it'll loosen the belt, and that way we can get the belt off of the pulley of the alternator. For me, it's easier to put a box end wrench on the end of my socket wrench and open it using that kind of leverage, and then I can take this apart and I'm not bumping into this sensor or this water hose. Okay, this is a 10mm bolt. It's holding this air conditioner line, and then there are 3, 1, 2, and then underneath this part is a third one, 3 15mm bolts that need to come off this bracket. Probably was on there. Okay, the bolt that's underneath here, I finally broke it loose. I just ended up using a shallow socket to get underneath here because this thing is in the way. If you use an extension in a deep well, this gets in the way, so I switched to a standard socket size and got the 3 bolts out. Alright, so with that out of the way, you can see that we've got a little better access to our alternator bolts. You got 2 15mm up top, 1 directly below the pulley, and the 2 electrical connections. You may find yourself switching between deep well and standard depth sockets. This electrical harness is kind of in the way. Not kinda, it is in the way. The head of this bolt is lined up almost directly in front of this hose right here. So I'm going to have to use a box end wrench to reach down in there and loosen this bolt and get it out using this thing. There really isn't any space to get my socket wrench down there. I'll pull these 2 bolts out and I'll loosen this bottom one, and I'll just leave the bolt in there and just pull the whole unit out with that bolt still in there. And once we get that loose, we'll tip it forward and we'll disconnect the 2 electrical connections. It's right there, and again, that hose is in the way. Really difficult to get a ratchet on there. Plus you'll be finding the fan, so I'll just be keeping this wrench in between the fan blades and then just trying to spin this thing off by hand. Okay, to get this bolt here out, I use my universal joint and extension and loosen that one. Worked out quite nicely. So the bolts are ready to come out. Again, I've got the bottom one still in, not connected, but still in the alternator. I'm just going to take it, kind of lift it, and rotate it forward so that I can access the pigtail. And lift this tab and push, and pull the boot off of this and slide it backwards. Get it out of the way and get this 10mm nut off the end of that bolt. The Trailblazer was being a squirrel and wouldn't give me the alternator. I threatened to kick him in the lug nuts and he handed it right over. Alright, I got my replacement alternator from the parts Trailblazer. Pinch my finger. Okay, that's generally what I did to get that thing out. So, okay, put my terminal back on. Pull that rubber boot back over the top of that puppy. Cover that back up. Alright, I'm going to put my pigtail back in. Okay, click. Okay, so I got that lower bolt where it's supposed to be. I'm trying to line up these holes. Just need to get one of them started and I'm in good shape. Doesn't act like it's sitting straight. I'm trying to figure this out. I got it on just a little bit crooked. Alright, I threaded all the bolts to get them started. All 3 are in, the pigtail's in. The reason why it wasn't lining up real good the first time was because on this terminal, when I tightened it down, the terminal wire was too much this way. And with it being tight, it didn't want to move, so it put it kind of in a bind. So I loosened that nut, turned the terminal wire this way, and then tightened it down. And that took the bind out of it. I should have thought about that before I started tightening down, but oh well. Okay, all we're going to do is tighten these bolts down, put this bracket back on. I'm going to have to bend this back, and serpentine belt. We'll see if this thing will start charging the battery. Alright, we're all back together. Battery cable's hooked up. Looks like we got some battery power. Let's see if that battery light goes off. Stays off. I'm going to be taking the Trailblazer out today. Got a couple errands to run. So I'll give you an update after a bit. Alright, you can see the alternator is charging the battery just fine. And the battery light is no longer on, and so the alternator was the issue, and it seems to be remedied now. So hopefully this video was helpful to you. If it was, go ahead and leave it a thumbs up down below. Check out my channel. I've got all kinds of repair videos, a lot of fun videos as well, and if it earns your subscription, I would greatly appreciate it. As always, God bless. We'll see you next time.